My name is Maya, and I'm a 30-year-old woman working as an employee at a company. I've been married to my husband, Nelson, for 2 years. We've had a pretty normal marriage, getting along well enough. But then, everything changed when I discovered Nelson's true nature. It all started when I came down with a terrible fever. Despite feeling awful, I went to work that day, but my condition worsened quickly. I felt dizzy, nauseous, and began shaking and sweating profusely. My forehead was burning hot. Realizing I had a fever, I told my boss I needed to leave early. Though I was barely holding it together, I managed to stop and buy some drinks, fruits, and cold medicine on my way home. Once I got home, I collapsed into bed. It was around lunchtime, so I called my husband. "Hey, I left work early. I'm really sorry to bother you during work, but I'm feeling really sick. I checked my temperature, and it's 100 degrees. Can you please come home as soon as you can?" I normally handle things on my own and try not to bother Nelson, but this time, I was really sick. I was worried it might be dangerous to stay home alone, so I asked him to be with me. His reply shocked me. "Huh? I don't want to do that. I'm staying out tonight because I don't want to catch what you have." "What?" Wait a minute. I was too weak to respond properly. Before I could say anything else, he hung up, saying his lunch break was over. More concerned about my worsening health than my husband's cold response, I immediately called my sister, who lived nearby. I told her that I was about to collapse at home with a high fever and needed help. She rushed over and took me to the hospital. The diagnosis revealed that I not only had a cold but also a stomach ulcer. At the time, I was so overwhelmed by the fever that I hadn't noticed the throbbing pain in my stomach. Looking back, the nausea I experienced might have been from the ulcer rather than the cold. I ended up being hospitalized for a few days. That first day, I was so sick that I slept like a rock in my hospital bed. The next day, I called my work to explain the situation, and my boss apologized, saying, "I'm sorry if I've been giving you too much work lately. Please take the time to rest and recover." Although I didn't feel like I had been overworking myself, maybe I was stressed about other things. My husband wasn't exactly great at helping around the house. It wasn't just the work at my job, I was also doing most of the housework alone. My husband had lived with his parents for a long time, so he wasn't used to handling household chores. When we first got married, I told him I wanted us to share the housework since we both worked, and he agreed. But over time, he started slacking off. The house became messy, and his cooking was terrible. There was one night when he served me instant noodles for dinner, and I couldn't help but feel like he was picking a fight. Even when I offered to teach him how to cook or clean, he was too lazy to put in the effort. Eventually, it became a routine where I did all the housework myself. I like to keep my place clean, and I enjoy cooking because I care about eating well. Gradually, I just gave up on relying on him, thinking it was faster if I did everything on my own. Looking back, I think I was pushing myself too hard. Between my job, which I took very seriously, and handling all the housework, I was putting a lot of strain on my body. No wonder I ended up getting sick. When I was in the hospital, I tried to call Nelson to let him know, but my phone was dead. I attempted to call his office from the hospital phone, but I couldn't remember his number. I had always contacted him through my cell phone. It was one of those moments that made me realize how dependent I'd become on technology. I had no choice but to wait for my sister to arrive with a change of clothes and other essentials. Around 6 p.m., after she finished work, she came to visit. "I brought you some clothes and your iPad," she said. "Thank you," I replied gratefully. My sister is incredibly thoughtful, and with the iPad, I could pass the time by watching movies and such. Remembering I still needed to contact Nelson, I borrowed my sister's phone and called him. The phone rang for a while, but he didn't pick up. Maybe he hadn't gotten home yet or was still on the train. Just as I was about to hang up and try again later, someone answered. "Hello, Nelson," I said, but instead of hearing his voice, a woman responded. "Who are you, and what's your relationship with Nelson?" "What?" I asked, confused. "I see your name is Alice Sanders. You're not dating Nelson, are you?" At that moment, I understood. "I'm just a friend," I lied, trying to make sense of the situation. "Okay, just a friend. Are you Nelson's girlfriend?" "Yes, I am." "But you know Nelson is married, right?" "Oh, you know all that, but that's none of your business. You're just a friend." "Yeah, that's right," I replied, trying to keep calm. "What do you want from Nelson?" "Oh, it's no big deal. I don't want to interrupt your time, so I'll call another time," I said, then hung up the phone. My sister, standing beside me, asked awkwardly, "Is Nelson?" "It seems he's having an affair," I replied. "That's disgusting," she muttered in disbelief. It all started to make sense. That's why Nelson was so cold when I called him yesterday, asking him to come home early. Maybe the woman who answered thought I was someone else because it wasn't my name on the screen. Oddly enough, I was grateful my phone had been dead. If I hadn't used my sister's phone, I would never have found out about the affair. Later, after charging my own phone, I called Nelson to tell him I was in the hospital. He replied that he was worried but couldn't visit because he didn't want to catch what I had. He just sent a message telling me to take care of myself. I couldn't help but laugh. Not only was he cheating, but he couldn't even bother to visit his sick wife in the hospital. What a despicable excuse for a husband. I calmly said, "Okay, I'll call you when I get out of the hospital," but in reality, I was buying time to plan. I was recovering well and was scheduled to be discharged that same day, but I wanted to keep my divorce preparations confidential. So, after leaving the hospital, I stayed at my sister's place. I arranged for a lawyer, hired a detective agency, and started looking for a new apartment. Once everything was in order, I called Nelson to let him know I had been discharged and was coming home. When I finally saw him, he greeted me with a nonchalant expression, saying, "Oh my God, it was such a hard time. I'm so glad you're out of the hospital." I had to play it cool for a few more days while waiting for the detective agency's report, but once I had all the information about the affair, I confronted Nelson with the divorce papers. "I want a divorce," I said firmly. "What?" he stammered, clearly confused. "I don't understand. What's this about? Why a sudden divorce?" "Ask yourself," I replied, handing him the papers. He looked at them, still not getting it. "I don't get it. What are you talking about? You're just going to keep pretending, aren't you?" "You must be very close to a woman named Scarlett Thompson," I said, watching his face pale and his demeanor shift. "She's just a junior colleague," he stuttered. "What do you suspect?" "There's no point in hiding it anymore." I played the audio recording from my sister's phone, where the woman openly admitted to having an affair with my husband. Realizing he couldn't deny it any longer, Nelson finally confessed. "I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me. Please forgive me." "I don't want a divorce," he pleaded. "Don't be ridiculous," I responded. "I know you don't want a divorce because you rely on my income and need someone to handle the housework." He couldn't argue with that. Even though he was desperate to avoid a divorce, I wasn't giving in. I sent a certified letter to his workplace, urging him to agree to the divorce. I also sent a certified letter to his affair partner, who worked at the same company, so their co-workers became aware of their relationship. Nelson was furious and called me. "You've caused a big problem at work. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to take responsibility? What a pathetic man." I told him, "You're responsible for your own actions." If you don't sign the divorce papers soon, we'll take this to court. How long do you think you can afford a legal battle when you earn less than me? Just give up and sign the papers. And yes, I'm charging both of you for alimony. In the end, the divorce was finalized. Nelson finally gave up and signed the papers. I filed for alimony against both him and his affair partner, and they each paid me $20,000. It still baffles me that he had the audacity to meet with his affair partner while I was sick in the hospital. I wish I could have gotten more alimony, but that was the best I could do under the circumstances, so I compromised. As for Nelson, his life took a nosedive. He got a pay cut at work and was transferred to another department. The affair partner, unable to handle the gossip, eventually resigned. But karma didn't stop there. One night, while Nelson was walking alone, her brother and a friend confronted him and beat him up. Apparently, her brother had a bit of a reputation for causing trouble, and Nelson ended up seriously injured. While I don't wish harm on anyone, I suppose he got what he deserved for his betrayal. On the other hand, I used the alimony as a down payment for a condo. Now, I'm living comfortably in my new home, enjoying my single life. I made a mistake in choosing a marriage partner, but I've learned from it. In the future, I hope to make a better decision and find someone truly worthy of me.